Good evening. Welcome back to the Shadow Gallery. I am, as always, your host, James Donnelly. And tonight we're going to just talk about something that has been making the rounds recently in regards to kind of comics history and important events within regards to specifically the characters of Batman and the Joker. And that is, of course, if you've been following Twitter or anything like that at all this week, it is Batman, the Killing Joke. Written, of course, by Alan Moore and art by Brian Bolland. Or Bolland. I'm not exactly sure how that last name is pronounced. But this has been, over the last couple of years, really, there's been a lot of controversy surrounding this book. And for a number of reasons, some of which we're going to talk about tonight. And we're just going to explore a little bit of this book and what has recently been going on around it. Now, aside from the fact that it is, in fact, written by Alan Moore, who is my favorite comic book writer of all time, despite the fact that some of his stuff now is a little bit inaccessible, at least to me. Stuff like Fashion Beast I just really didn't get into. Some of his more recent stuff in regards to the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen has been a little tepid, I guess I could say. But by and large, from the historical work that he's done, obviously the length and breadth of his contributions to the comics world, of course, have changed just about everything. And Brian Bolland, I mean, I'm glad that they reissued this, because I do have the original second printing, yes, the second printing, around in one of my long boxes, but this I'm glad that they re-released, because it's recolored in the way that, because they brought in colorist John Higgins kind of at the 11th hour, because Brian, it took him 5 years to illustrate this, and whether or not that's an exaggeration or if that's really true, it's kind of unknown to me. But there's a lot of beautiful, horrific, disturbing artwork in this book. And just thematically, there's a lot of extremely disturbing moments. Now, obviously, this particular vision of the Joker was very much what, for instance, Christopher Nolan brought to The Dark Knight. There's no other comic in the entire opus of Joker stories that has had as much influence on Heath Ledger's portrayal of the Joker as in this book. So, but that's just all historical stuff, and, just as a side note, I always think that it's funny that, it has this quote up here from Tim Burton, despite the fact that he so much has admitted that he doesn't even read comic books, and that, even though this came out in 1988, presumably probably when around his version of Batman started filming, and he would, and he said, he's set on record, I never read Batman comic book. He just wanted to construct his own vision of Batman, which of course most of us, I think, will agree sucks. So anyway, moving on. Now this book, there are really there are three things that have become very controversial about this book. One thing that's just kind of come up in the last week, and some things that have been floating around for at least a couple of years, probably since the late 80s, since this book was published. And we're going to go, like I said, we're going to go over some of those. The first bit that I want to talk about is the shooting of Barbara Gordon, essentially making her a paraplegic and confined to a wheelchair. Now, this was something that angered the kind of legion of female fans of comics that were out there, comic writers. I think even, and I'm maybe remembering this wrong, but I think that even Gail Simone herself has had something to say about the treatment of Barbara Gordon in this particular book. I'm, again, also dead positive that there's been a lot of negativity in regards to this from the great Tumblr / Twitter account DC Women Kicking Ass. Now, I don't take issue particularly with the things that they have to say, but I don't think, because obviously it's based on, obviously from much more of a female perspective, which I obviously, don't really have in my own brain as much as I'd like to. So I do see where they're coming from, but at the same time, and I do think that it's necessary to the story that Alan Moore is trying to tell, which is that one bad day can drive a person insane. Obviously he makes, in his speech, he makes that reference to Batman himself, but what he's really trying to do who he's really trying to do that to is to Commissioner Gordon. By invading his home, or I should say her home, and shooting her through the spine. Now the apparent this is something that again is also contested, which is the sexual assault / rape of Barbara Gordon. A lot of people out there believe that the Joker, or at least his henchman that he was with, raped Barbara Gordon when after she had been shot. I don't think that, because I don't think that Alan Moore used that particular storytelling device here. But I do believe that taking off her clothes was sexual assault. So, I mean, if you're wanting to split hairs about this, I mean, essentially it is a violation that is horrific, and whether or not it's physical or mental rape, I guess it really doesn't matter, because one way or the other, she is violated. And violated sexually. So again, it's so I guess again the physical aspect of it not being part of it, but there is a rape aspect to it, and that is something that I do have a bit of a problem with, in regards to just using that essentially as a storytelling device, but it doesn't go to waste here. I'll put that on the table. I don't think that this is something, because obviously Alan Moore has used rape before. He used it in Watchmen. Um, I believe that it was used in Miracle Man or Marvel Man, whatever you want to call it. Um, there's nothing like that in Swamp Thing. There's the threat of rape in V for Vendetta. Um, there are. Oh, I won't even touch Lost Girls, to be perfectly honest, because there's a lot of there's a lot going on there sexually, um, and then of course the really horrific rape of the Invisible Man, Holly Griffin, by Mr. Hyde, in and also basically what is kind of a sexual assault against Mina Murray that Griffin had committed, that led to Mr. Hyde's rape of the Invisible Man. Wow. It's something that it kind of sends shivers up my spine just thinking about how gruesome that was. Anyway, so, but like I said, it doesn't feel like it's a cheap device in this book, because it's something that they are going for. They're not trying to make Gordon angry. They're trying to make him insane. Unlike I've talked a lot about Kick-Ass 2 and the rape that's in that. I'm not talking about the movie, because apparently they cut that out of the movie, which was a smart move on the director's part, but I'm sure the movie is still as much of a piece of shit as the book is. And a lot of reviews have confirmed that. So these are very hotly contested things. And going back to the making Barbara Gordon handicapped, I think really the biggest controversy that stemmed out of that was the moment when, well, I shouldn't say moment, but she became, because out of that birthed the character of Oracle, who was, just seemed at first to be kind of a, not fun, but, just this, again, it was almost like using, it was almost like she'd become a plot device. She became the kind of Deus Ex Machina for a little while in the DC universe, and maybe in the beginnings of Birds of Prey, but then later became a much stronger character, and became a much bigger player than she had ever been as Batgirl. Particularly when I think of Oracle at kind of the apex of her kind of career as Oracle. I mean, she's the information broker for the Justice League. I mean, she helps them communicate with one another. She helps organize the teams. So, I mean, that's a lot more impact than she ever had as Batgirl. So, I mean, taking that, this handicapped woman and making her a very strong, character while still being confined to a wheelchair, was pretty incredible. And people began to kind of love this iteration of Barbara Gordon, and then all of a sudden came the New 52, and of course that still existed. That part of her past still existed, but thanks to the retcon, she was never Oracle. She just had this kind of magical operation that allowed her, basically the use of her legs again, and now she's Batgirl again. And, for better or for worse, she's Batgirl, and she's here to stay. So, those seem to be some of the more contentious things. But the biggest thing that is most recent to this book is the subject of the ending, the very ending. Because we have, obviously, the moment in which Batman offers, instead of beating the Joker to a pulp, which is what everyone seems to want him to do, even the Joker himself seems to want him to do, Batman says, no, I don't want to, and wants to work with him to somehow rehabilitate him, because Batman, this is one of the key elements of how Moore writes Batman, is that he does still believe that that the fatalistic nature of their existence together has created this, basically a relationship of symbiosis where one is bound to kill the other. That's unavoidable. Now, this week we were treated to Kevin Smith, of course, does a podcast called Fat Man on Batman, and this week he had Grant Morrison on his show. Now, Grant Morrison is, to me, for those of you who already watch my vlogs, he is. I have a very much of a love-hate relationship with Grant Morrison. There's a lot of his work that I love and adore, and there's a lot of his work that I hate and think is just. It's almost upsetting. It is upsetting as to how bad a lot of it is, particularly his work on the character of Batman, with the exception of Arkham Asylum, and maybe Batman and Son, which I think is kind of more of an entertaining romp than the more extraordinarily hallucinogenic later arcs that he did, particularly with the R.I.P. arc, which is the worst of the lot to me. His work on Final Crisis also was deeply disturbing and deeply upsetting. I thought it was totally unnecessary. But it was what the powers that be at DC wanted. So that's what had to happen. So, anyway, so in this conversation that they talk about the very last page in which the Joker tells the joke about the men escaping the lunatic asylum, the two men escaping the lunatic asylum and using the flashlight to cross the bridge, to cross the gap between the two buildings. And then there's the punchline, and the Joker starts laughing, and then Batman starts laughing along with him. And there's a panel in the middle of this that kind of helps to, because the last page does ultimately, as Alan Moore likes to do, brings the book full circle to the drops of rain hitting the puddle. But before that, we get this panel profile of the Joker and Batman, and while they're both laughing together, Batman reaches out, and as what we are possibly led to believe, this is one of the genius moments of this book because of its ambiguity. Now, Grant Morrison talks about it being more, he does talk about the ambiguity of it, but he does believe, as I originally believed, that there is a more final moment. And we're going to cut to that, to this little bit that somebody put up on YouTube of this snippet of the conversation between Kevin Smith and Grant Morrison about that. So have a listen and a look at this, and you'll see a little bit more what I'm talking about. So
another biggie that everyone always points when he Batman mainstream to people, he said Batman mainstream or Batman comics to the mainstream people, they'll pull like, Dark Knight Returns or Arkham Asylum or Killing Joke.
Killing Joke, Killing Joke's good. And I kind of like Killing Joke, 'cause we talk about this, no one gets the end. Because Batman kills the Joker.
No. All right. We didn't talk about
Right,
this.
well, we got to talk, okay, let's have Killing Joke as our second in command here. No, that's what I love about it. It's like no one's noticed, like how many, 30 years on almost. Batman kills the Joker. That's why it's called The Killing Joke. The Joker tells the killing joke at the end. Batman reaches out and breaks his neck, and that's why the laughter stops and then the light goes out, because that was their last chance at crossing that bridge. And Alan Moore wrote the ultimate Batman Joker story, finished it.
Fuck out of here.
Yeah, but he did it in such a way that it's ambiguous, so people will never have to be sure, which means it doesn't have to be the last Batman Joker story. It's brilliant. It's like,
So for those, I mean,
it's a super
Walt
construction.
Flanagan, my friend Walt Flanagan, he's like, I can't stand the end of that. They're just laughing.
No, they're not. They're laughing, and Batman reaches out, grabs his neck and breaks it, and the laughter stops. It actually abruptly stops, which tells you he's just reached out and killed him. It's really obvious if you look back at it.
So the only thing that's missing is a quirk or something like that, a sound, a little onomatopoeia.
Yeah, but that would have made it too obvious. And
Right.
I'm sure that Alan Moore wanted to make it, this is the last Batman Joker story. This is the inevitable end. This is the killing joke. He says it in the title. But if I say
I've never
that,
seen it. I've been reading that book for
I know,
years.
but
I
look,
never saw that.
If you look at it again, it's the most obvious thing in the world, and then the light switches because he's just killed him. It's like there's no chance of them crossing that bridge anymore.
Oh, that redefines that book in such a major way.
And that's
man.
why it's so great.
And it's so strange because then that would make it an Elseworlds book because he kills the Joker.
Yeah, because he didn't want to. I mean, he's not. Moore likes to be able to do. He's done it all. He's given you the end of the end of this conflict, but at the same time, it's ambiguous enough that any future story will just be another echo of this.
I wonder how many fucking people see that.
Nobody, I've never seen it, people talking about it, and it's so fucking obvious. The only person who's ever mentioned it is Brian Boland, who hints at it and then leaves it trailing, you know.
And he would know.
He knows, of course he knows. He says the Joker reaches out. He goes for his neck, and he breaks his neck, and the laughter stops.
I wonder if he's ever said that on a panel.
No, no one's ever said, because it has to be ambiguous. That's what makes it great. And it's what makes it the ultimate Batman Joker story.
Dude, you have fucking you've third-eyed me and fucking shattered my world. Like that changes the framework from which I've viewed that story forever. And I loved Killing Joke.
It makes the whole
but it makes
book
even more.
so much better.
Yeah,
honestly. It really does.
It elevated
It's
it.
the finale. It's the end. Of course it has to be the end. He's just crippled.
Alan Moore secretly wrote the last Batman story.
Of course he did.
And no,
He was hired to write, he did it, but he did it in such a way that, no, it doesn't, if only if you notice, which is beautiful.
David.
So, now you see what I'm talking about, is that what I always, or I shouldn't say always, but what I originally believed when I first read The Killing Joke is that Batman killed the Joker. That he had finally, in regards to the book itself, as he says, it's called The Killing Joke. And in regards to the first exchange that Batman and the Joker have at Arkham Asylum, where he says, I've been thinking about us, about you and me. We're going to kill each other, aren't we? And, maybe I'll kill you, maybe you'll kill me. And the end, and when I read that for the first time back in 1988, I thought to myself, this is the point. This is the point that Moore has just successfully made throughout the course of this book, is that yes, one of them was going to kill the other. And in order to prevent anything like what had just happened to Barbara, what had just happened to Jim Gordon, to ever happen again, and just the many deaths that Gotham City has suffered at the hands of the Joker, it all came to an end right there. And I believe that there's a huge part of me that believes that Alan Moore did in fact secretly write the last Batman Joker story. It just happened to continue. And that's one of the things that has obviously been very contentious about this in this debate recently in regards to The Killing Joke. Does Batman kill? What sets him over the edge? If he ever is going to kill. And this book is kind of the answer. Now, what of course happened after this book is that, in the same year, in 1988, we had A Death in the Family. So basically we had the Joker reappearing as to basically say that it's not an Elseworld story or a what if, but rather a story that bleeds into the DC Universe continuity in order to obviously keep the big money character, the big villain for Batman, because who is Batman without the Joker? Well, I mean, Frank Miller kind of answers that in The Dark Knight Returns, which is that he's not really much of anybody, that there is, again, a relationship of symbiosis, that they feed off of each other, so that they could never kill each other. And again, that's a point that's obviously brought home also in Chris Nolan's The Dark Knight. So I'd like to hear some of your thoughts on this, or like to see some of your thoughts on this, if you want to maybe do something of your own and put it up as a response to this, or if you just want to respond below, because, as you know, one of the reasons that I came back is because I like to have give and take with my audience. If I could stand up on a stage and speak to you and have a Q&A afterwards, that would be even better, but I can't do that, because you're all miles and sometimes continents away. So I want to hear what a lot of you have to think about this, and just as a little bit of a plus, because I thought to myself, you know what, I'm going to pull up Wikipedia here on my tablet, and just make sure that we have a lot of the information that I wanted to cover in this, just to look at this and see how the information is here. Now, if you have Wikidroid, or because I haven't looked at the actual Wikipedia page of this, but this is the page itself. You'll see a pretty interesting name if you look at critical reception and legacy, because it is the paragraph that begins with Hilary Goldstein of IGN Comics praised the Killing Joke, calling it, quote, easily the greatest Joker story ever told, and adding that, quote, Mora's rhythmic dialogue and Bolland's organic art create a unique story often mimicked but never matched. IGN declared The Killing Joke the third greatest Batman graphic novel after The Dark Knight Returns and Batman Year One. James Donnelly of Pop Syndicate called The Killing Joke one of the greatest comics of the 20th century, period. I was quoted. Me. This is back when I wrote for PopSyndicate.com, and I did a review of this very hardcover. So to discover that tonight is a pretty massive discovery for me. So I know that some of you won't care, but yes, when I did write for PopSyndicate.com, this was part of it. So it's just in a book that is this widely searched, that is this widely read about. I'm sure that Wikipedia has a number of hits to this page. My name is on there, and it quotes me, and that's kind of insane from my point of view. So I'm just going to kind of leave beaming off of that, but I really do want to hear from you. I want to hear what you have to say, what you think about this, if you agree, if you disagree, because I'm going to kind of leave this ending a little bit ambiguous, in the sense that I don't want to, I'm not going to really say what my final thoughts on this are, but I'd just really like to hear from you. So don't forget to comment. If this is your first time here, hey, please subscribe. and we'll probably talk. We're going to talk later in the month, certainly with the release of The World's End. I'm sure that we'll see each other. But for now, I want to thank you again for stopping by, for watching and or listening. If you're listening on iTunes, if you do have iTunes, if you want to hear some of my previous vlogs without having to watch it on your computer, you can, of course, search the Shadow Gallery Comics on iTunes, and you will find my podcasts. So, and they're just transcriptions of this, so your audio files of this. So, thank you again for watching and or listening. I am James Donnelly. You are now exiting the Shadow Gallery, and thank you again. See you next time.